If you want to drop an attacker without brute strength, you need to understand pressure points. Tiny targets, massive consequences. But here's the disturbing truth. Most martial arts teach muscle strikes. Punch the jaw, kick the ribs, break bones. However, ancient shinobi fighters didn't target muscles. They targeted the body's control switches, hidden nerve points that can shut down breathing, collapse the lungs, and drop someone instantly. Sounds impossible? Good. Because the first pressure point is so brutal, modern combat sports completely banned it. Value hit / setup. See, the human body is basically an electrical circuit. Nerves carry signals like Wi-Fi signals in a smartphone. Interrupt the signal, and the body glitches. Breathing stops, balance disappears, the brain panics. Shinobi warriors studied these points like hackers studying computer code. And today, you're about to see 13 of the most dangerous ones, starting with a pressure point that can turn breathing off like a light switch. Strike number 13, the clavicle switch. Right under the collarbone sits a fragile nerve cluster. It's like the breaker panel of your chest muscles. A sharp strike here sends a shock through the brachial plexus nerve network. Suddenly, the chest tightens, arms weaken, breathing becomes shallow. Imagine your lungs trying to work while someone is squeezing the power cable. That's what this strike feels like. But the next point is even nastier, because it doesn't just affect breathing. It scrambles the brain's oxygen supply. Strike number 12, the carotid stun. This one sits along the side of the neck. Hit it correctly, and the brain thinks blood pressure just crashed. So it reacts by shutting the body down. Lights out. It's basically like pressing the restart button on a computer. Even modern systems like Krav Maga use controlled versions of this strike. But the Shinobi version, far more dangerous, because the next pressure point doesn't knock you out. It makes your lungs panic. Strike number 11, the solar shock. Right below the sternum sits the solar plexus, a dense nerve web controlling the diaphragm. Hit this spot, and the diaphragm spasms. The lungs suddenly forget how to inhale. You've probably seen fighters freeze after a body shot. That's the same effect, but amplified. It feels like someone pressed pause on your breathing. Yet the Shinobi had a far more sinister version of this attack, hidden between the ribs. Strike number 10, the intercostal needle. Between every rib runs a delicate nerve line. These nerves control rib expansion during breathing. A sharp jab here feels like electricity exploding across the chest. The muscles lock. Breathing becomes painful. Imagine trying to inflate a balloon while someone is pinching it from all sides. That's what this strike does. But the next point is even worse, because it targets the lungs directly. Strike number 9, the lung gate. Located slightly under the armpit. This area protects part of the upper lung cavity. A precise strike compresses the rib cage inward. Air rushes out violently. For a moment, the lungs simply cannot refill. It's like squeezing a plastic bottle full of air. The air explodes out, and the body desperately tries to recover. But the Shinobi had an even more disturbing trick. A strike that makes the entire chest collapse inward. Strike number 8, the sternum spike, the center of the chest, hard bone, but behind it lies a vulnerable pressure point connected to breathing reflexes. A sudden strike sends shock through the vagus nerve pathways. The body responds with instant respiratory shock. Think of it like hitting the emergency brake on a moving car. Everything jerks, everything stops. But now we're entering truly terrifying territory. Because the next strike targets the nerve that literally controls breathing. Strike number 7, the phrenic cut. Hidden near the base of the neck is the phrenic nerve. This nerve tells the diaphragm when to move. Hit this nerve cluster, and the diaphragm hesitates. Breathing becomes shallow and erratic. It's like a drummer suddenly losing the rhythm of a song. The lungs try to breathe, but the signal is broken. Yet Shinobi warriors didn't stop there.
because the next pressure point attacks the lungs from the back. Strike number 6, the scapula drop. Behind the shoulder blade lies a sensitive nerve pathway. A downward strike here sends shock through the upper ribs. The chest muscles spasm. The lungs struggle to expand. It's similar to disconnecting the hinges on a door. The structure stops moving properly.
At the bottom of the rib cage sit 2 floating ribs. They aren't anchored like the others, which means a sharp strike can drive them inward. When that happens, the body instantly forces a breathing shutdown reflex. The lungs tighten, air escapes, and pain floods the nervous system. But the next pressure point isn't about pain. It's about complete breathing confusion. Strike number 4, the diaphragm lock. Located just under the rib line, this strike jams the diaphragm muscle. Think of the diaphragm like a pump for your lungs. If the pump freezes, air stops moving. That's why fighters hit here in boxing. But Shinobi fighters used angled strikes to amplify the effect. Which leads us to a pressure point that can drop someone almost instantly. Strike number 3, the vagus shock. This nerve controls heart rate and breathing rhythm. A sudden strike near the neck or upper chest can overload it. The body reacts by slowing everything down. Heart rate drops, breathing weakens, vision fades. It's like someone suddenly pulling the power cord from a laptop. But the next pressure point is even darker, because it traps air inside the lungs. Strike number 2, the rib cage crush. This point sits along the lower ribs. A powerful inward strike compresses the chest cavity. The lungs collapse inward. Air is forced out violently, and the body enters survival panic mode. For a few terrifying seconds, breathing simply doesn't work. But the final pressure point is the one many martial arts masters refuse to even demonstrate. Strike number 1, the shadow lung switch. Located between the upper ribs near the sternum, a precise strike here shocks the breathing reflex center. The diaphragm spasms, the lungs empty, and the body temporarily forgets how to inhale. It's like someone suddenly deleted the breathing command from the brain. That's why ancient shinobi guarded this knowledge like nuclear launch codes. Because in the wrong hands, these tiny pressure points could turn the human body into a malfunctioning machine. Now here's the chilling truth. Your body has hundreds of pressure points like these. Hidden switches, nerve circuits, biological off buttons. Ancient warriors studied them like engineers studying blueprints. But most people never reflex how fragile the human system really is. If this video opened your eyes to the shadow science of combat, then you'll definitely want to see the next one, because there are even darker techniques used by assassins to shut down the body without leaving a mark. And trust me, some of those secrets are far more terrifying than these.